Burbank, California. Burbank is a city in Los Angeles County in the Los Angeles metropolitan area of Southern California, United States, 12 miles, 19 kilometers, northwest of downtown Los Angeles. The population at the 2010 census was 103,340. Built as the media capital of the world and only a few miles northeast of Hollywood, numerous media and entertainment companies are headquartered or have significant production facilities in Burbank, including Warner Brothers Entertainment, the Walt Disney Company, Nickelodeon Animation Studios, the Burbank Studios, Cartoon Network Studios with the West Coast branch of Cartoon Network, and Insomniac Games. The Hollywood Burbank Airport was the location of Lockheed's Skunk Works, which produced some of the most secret and technologically advanced airplanes, including the U-2 spy planes that uncovered the Soviet Union missile components in Cuba in October 1962. Burbank consists of two distinct areas, a downtown/foothill section, in the foothills of the Verdugo Mountains, and the flatland section. The city was referred to as Beautiful Downtown Burbank on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In and The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. The city was named after David Burbank, a New Hampshire-born dentist and entrepreneur who established a sheep ranch there in 1867. History. Early history. The city of Burbank occupies land that was originally part of two Spanish and Mexican-era colonial land grants, the 36,400-acre, 147 square kilometers, Rancho San Rafael, granted to José María Verdugo by the Spanish Bourbon government in 1784, and the 4,063-acre, 16.44 square kilometers, Rancho Providencia created in 1821. Historically, this area was the scene of a military skirmish which resulted in the unseating of the Spanish governor of California, and his replacement by the Mexican leader Pío Pico. Remnants of the military battle reportedly were found many years later in the vicinity of Warner Brothers' studio when residents dug up cannonballs. Dr. David Burbank purchased over 4,600 acres, 19 square kilometers, of the former Verdugo holding and another 4,600 acres, 19 square kilometers, of the Rancho Providencia in 1867 and built a ranch house and began to raise sheep and grow wheat on the ranch. By 1876, the San Fernando Valley became the largest wheat-raising area in Los Angeles County. But the droughts of the 1860s and 1870s underlined the need for steady water supplies. A professionally trained dentist, Burbank began his career in Waterville, Maine. He joined the Great Migration westward in the early 1850s and, by 1853 was living in San Francisco. At the time the American Civil War broke out, he was again well established in his profession as a dentist in Pueblo de Los Angeles. In 1867, he purchased Rancho La Providencia from David W. Alexander and Francis Mellis, and he purchased the western portion of the Rancho San Rafael, 4,603 acres, from Jonathan R. Scott. Burbank's property reached nearly 9,200 acres, 37 square kilometers, at a cost of $9,000. Burbank would not acquire full titles to both properties until after a court decision known as the Great Partition was made in 1871 dissolving the Rancho San Rafael. He eventually became known as one of the largest and most successful sheep raisers in Southern California, and as a result, he closed his dentistry practice and invested heavily in real estate in Los Angeles. Burbank also later owned the Burbank Theater, which opened on November 27, 1893, at a cost of $150,000. It struggled for many years and by August of 1900 had its 13th manager. The new manager's name was Oliver Morosco, who was already known as a successful theatrical impresario. He put the theater on the path to prosperity for many years. Though the theater was intended to be an opera house, instead it staged plays and became known nationally. The theater featured famous actors of the time including Fay Bainter and Marjorie Rambeau, until it had deteriorated into a burlesque house. When the area that became Burbank was settled in the 1870s and 1880s, the streets were aligned along what is now Olive Avenue, the road to the Cahuenga Pass and downtown Los Angeles. These were largely the roads the Native Americans traveled, and the early settlers took their produce down to Los Angeles to sell and to buy supplies along these routes. At the time, the primary long-distance transportation methods available to San Fernando Valley residents were stagecoach and train. Stagecoaching between Los Angeles and San Francisco through the valley began in 1858. The Southern Pacific Railroad arrived in the valley in 1876, completing the route connecting San Francisco and Los Angeles. A shrewd businessman, foreseeing the value of rail transport, Burbank sold Southern Pacific Railroad a right-of-way through the property for $1. The first train passed through Burbank on April 5, 1874. A boom created by a rate war between the Santa Fe and Southern Pacific brought people streaming into California shortly thereafter, and a group of speculators purchased much of Burbank's land holdings in 1886 for $250,000. One account suggests Burbank may have sold his property because of a severe drought that year, which caused a shortage of water and grass for his livestock. Approximately 1,000 of his sheep died due to the drought conditions. The group of speculators who bought the acreage formed the Providencia Land, Water, and Development Company and began developing the land, calling the new town Burbank after its founder, and began offering farm lots on May 1, 1887. The town site had Burbank Boulevard/Walnut Avenue as the northern boundary, Grandview Avenue as the southern boundary, the edge of the Verdugo Mountains as the eastern boundary, and Clybourne Avenue was the western border. The establishment of a water system in 1887 allowed farmers to irrigate their orchards and provided a stronger base for agricultural development. The original plot of the new town site of Burbank extended from what is now Burbank Boulevard on the north, to Grandview Avenue in Glendale, California on the south, and from the top of the Verdugo Hills on the east to what is now known as Clybourne Avenue on the west. At the same time, the arrival of the railroad provided immediate access for the farmers to bring crops to market. Packing houses and warehouses were built along the railroad corridors. The railroads also provided access to the county for tourists and immigrants alike. A Southern Pacific Railroad depot in Burbank was completed in 1887. The boom lifting real estate values in the Los Angeles area proved to be a speculative frenzy that collapsed abruptly in 1889. Much of the newly created wealthy went broke. Many of the lots in Burbank ended up getting sold for taxes. Vast numbers of people would leave the region before it all ended. By 1904, Burbank received international attention for having world heavyweight boxing champion James J. Jeffries become a major landowner in the town. Jeffries bought 107 acres, 0.43 square kilometers, to build a ranch on Victory Boulevard. He eventually raised cattle and sold them in Mexico and South America, becoming one of the first citizens to engage in foreign trade. He eventually built a large ranch home and barn near where Victory and Buena Vista Street now intersect. The barn was later removed and reassembled at Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California. Burbank's first telephone exchange, or telephone switch, was established in August 1900, becoming the first in the San Fernando Valley. Within 5 years, there were several telephone exchanges in the valley and became known as the San Fernando Valley Home Telephone Company, based in Glendale. Home Telephone competed with Tropico, and in 1918 both were taken over by Pacific Telephone Company. At this time, there were an estimated 300 hand-cranked telephones in Burbank. The town's first bank was formed in 1908 when Burbank State Bank opened its doors near the corner of Olive Avenue and San Fernando Boulevard. On the first day, the bank collected $30,000 worth of deposits, and at the time the town had a population of 300 residents. In 1911, the bank was dissolved. It would then become the Burbank branch of the Security Trust and Savings Bank. In 1911, wealthy farmer Joseph Fox grew apricots and owned a house on West Olive Avenue. He also had a fascination for machinery, and soon began developing what became known as the Fox Folly aerial trolley. He and his wife Ellen C. Fox secured 2 patents for the nation's first monorail. The two formed the Aerial Trolley Car Company and set about building a prototype they believed would revolutionize transportation. Joseph Fox called the trolley his aerial swallow, a cigar-shaped, suspended monorail driven by a propeller that he promised would carry passengers from Burbank to downtown Los Angeles in 10 minutes. The first open car accommodated about 20 passengers and was suspended from an overhead track and supported by wooden beams. In 1911, the monorail car made its first and only run through his Burbank ranch, with a line between Lake and Flower Streets. The monorail was considered a failure after gliding just a foot or so and falling to pieces. Nobody was injured, but Joseph Fox's pride was badly hurt as Aerial Swallow became known as Fox Folly. City officials viewed his test run as a failure and focused on getting a Pacific Electric streetcar line into Burbank. Laid out and surveyed with a modern business district surrounded by residential lots, wide boulevards were carved out as the Los Angeles Express printed. The citizens of Burbank had to put up a $48,000 subsidy to get the reluctant Pacific Electric streetcar officials to agree to extend the line from Glendale to Burbank. The first red car rolled into Burbank on September 6, 1911, with a tremendous celebration. That was about 2 months after the town became a city. The Burbank Review newspaper ran a special edition that day advising all local residents that the Burbank line was completed through to Cypress Avenue in Burbank, and by mid-1925 this line was extended about a mile further along Glen Oaks Boulevard to Eden Drive. A small wooden station was erected in Burbank in 1911 at Orange Grove Avenue with a small storage yard in its rear. This depot was destroyed by fire in 1942, and in 1947 a small passenger shelter was constructed. On May 26, 1942, the California State Railroad Commission proposed an extension of the Burbank line to the Lockheed plant. The proposal called for a double-track line from Arden Junction along Glen Oaks to San Fernando Boulevard and Empire Way, just northeast of Lockheed's main facility. But this extension never materialized and the commission moved on to other projects in the San Fernando Valley. The red car line in Burbank was abandoned and the tracks removed in 1956. The city marshal's office was changed to the Burbank Police Department in 1923. The first police chief was George Cole, who later became a U.S. Treasury Prohibition officer. In 1928, Burbank was one of the first 13 cities to join the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, one of the largest suppliers of water in the world. This contrasted with other San Fernando Valley communities that obtained water through political annexation to Los Angeles. By 1937, the first power from Hoover Dam was distributed over Burbank's own electricity lines. The city purchases about 55% of its water from the MWD. City of Burbank. The town grew steadily, weathering the drought and depression that hit Los Angeles in the 1890s, and in 20 years, the community had a bank, newspaper, high school, and a thriving business district with a hardware store, livery stable, dry goods store, general store, and bicycle repair shop. The city's first newspaper, Burbank Review, established in 1906. The populace petitioned the state legislature to incorporate as a city on July 8, 1911, with businessman Thomas Story as the mayor. Voters approved incorporation by a vote of 81 to 51. At the time, the Board of Trustees governed the community, which numbered 500 residents. With the action of the legislature, Burbank thus became the first independent city in the San Fernando Valley. The first city seal adopted by Burbank featured a cantaloupe, which was a crop that helped save the town's life when the land boom collapsed. In 1931, the original city seal was replaced, and in 1978 the modern seal was adopted. The new seal shows City Hall beneath a banner but no cantaloupe. An airplane symbolizes the city's aircraft industry, the strip of film and stage light represent motion picture production. The bottom portion depicts the sun rising over the Verdugo Mountains. In 1915, major sections of the valley capitulated, helping Los Angeles to more than double its size that year. But Burbank was among a handful of towns with their own water wells and remained independent. By 1916 Burbank had 1,500 residents. In 1922, the Burbank Chamber of Commerce was organized. The federal government officially recognized Burbank's status in 1923 when the United States Postal Service reclassified the city from the rural village mail delivery to city postal delivery service. By this time, Burbank's population had grown significantly, from less than 500 people in 1908 to over 3,000 citizens. The city's business district grew on the west side of San Fernando Boulevard and stretched from Verdugo to Cypress Avenues, and on the east side to Palm Avenue. In 1927, 5 miles, 8 kilometers, of paved streets had increased to 125 miles, 201 kilometers. The Wall Street crash of 1929 set off a period of hardship for Burbank where business and residential growth paused. The effects of the Depression also caused tight credit conditions and halted home building throughout the area, including the city's Magnolia Park development. Around this time, major employers began to cut payrolls and some plants closed their doors forever. Around this time, Burbank City Council responded by slashing 10% from the wages of city workers. Money was put into an employee relief department to help the unemployed. Local civic and religious groups sprang into action and contributed with food as homeless camps began to form along the city's Southern Pacific Railroad tracks. Hundreds began to participate in self-help cooperatives, trading skills such as barbering, tailoring, plumbing or carpentry for food and other services. By 1930, as First National Studios, Andrew Jurgens Company, the Lockheed Company, McNeil and Libby Canning Company, the Moreland Company, and Northrop Aircraft Corporation opened facilities in Burbank and the population jumped to 16,662. In the 1930s, Burbank and Glendale prevented the Civilian Conservation Corps from stationing African American workers in a local park, citing sundown town ordinances that both cities had adopted. Following a valley land bust during the Depression, real estate began to bounce back in the mid-1930s. In Burbank, a 100-home construction project began in 1934. By 1936, property values in the city exceeded pre-Depression levels. By 1950, the population had reached 78,577. It was no longer the tiny little village of Jane Russell's song Hollywood Cinderella, it had become a major Los Angeles suburb. From 1967 to 1989 a 6-block stretch of San Fernando Boulevard was pedestrianized as the Golden Mall. As of June 2008, the city employee population in Burbank stood at 1,683. Of the total, 1,253 were full-time, 217 part-time, and 213 temporary employees. The Burbank City Employees Association represents workers in the city. The organization dates back to 1939, and its primary role was to secure civil service status for city workers. The BCEA, representing more than 750 city employees, is one of 6 bargaining unions in Burbank city government. Others include the Burbank Firefighters Association, the Burbank Police Officers Association, the International Brotherhood of Electric Workers Local 18, the Burbank Firefighters Chief Officers Unit, and the Burbank Management Association. Early manufacturing. In 1887, the Burbank Furniture Manufacturing Company was the town's first factory. After the land boom downturn in 1888, the building was abandoned and transients slept in the empty factory. In 1917, the arrival of the Moreland Motor Truck Company changed the town and resulted in a manufacturing and industrial workforce begin to take root in the city. Within a few years Moreland trucks were seen bearing the label, "Made in Burbank." Watt Moreland, its owner, had relocated his plant to Burbank from Los Angeles. He selected 25 acres, 100,000 square meters, at San Fernando Boulevard and Alameda Avenue. Moreland invested $1 million in the factory and machinery, and employed 500 people. It was the largest truck maker west of the Mississippi. Within the next several decades, factories, both large and small, would dot the area landscape. What had mainly been an agricultural and ranching area would get replaced with a variety of manufacturing industries. Moreland operated from 1917 to 1937. Aerospace supplier Menasco Manufacturing Company would later purchase the property. Menasco's Burbank landing gear factory closed in 1994 due to slow commercial and military orders, affecting 310 people. Within months of Moreland's arrival, Community Manufacturing Company, a $3 million tractor company, arrived in Burbank. In 1920, the Andrew Juergens Company factory opened at Verdugo Avenue near the railroad tracks in Burbank. Andrew Juergens, Jr., aided by his father, Cincinnati businessman Andrew Juergens, Sr., and business partners Frank Adams and Morris Spazier had purchased the site and built a single-story building. They began with a single product, coconut oil soap, but would later make face creams, lotions, liquid soaps and deodorants. In 1931, despite the Depression, the Juergens Company expanded, building new offices and shipping department facilities. In 1939, the Burbank Corporation merged with the Cincinnati Company of Andrew Juergens, Sr., becoming known as the Andrew Juergens Company of Ohio. The Burbank plant closed in 1992, affecting nearly 90 employees. Aviation. The establishment of the aircraft industry in a major airport in Burbank during the 1930s set the stage for major growth and development, which was to continue at an accelerated pace into World War II and well into the post-war era. Brothers Alan Lougheed and Malcolm Lougheed, founders of the Lockheed Aircraft Company, opened a Burbank manufacturing plant in 1928, and a year later famed aviation designer Jack Northrop built his historic flying wing airplane in his own plant nearby. Dedicated on Memorial Day weekend, May 30–June 1, 1930, the United Airport was the largest commercial airport in the Los Angeles area until it was eclipsed in 1946 by the Los Angeles Municipal Airport, now Los Angeles International Airport, in Westchester when that facility, the former Mines Field, commenced commercial operations. Amelia Earhart, Wiley Post, and Howard Hughes were among the notable aviation pioneers to pilot aircraft in and out of the original Union Air Terminal. By 1935, Union Air Terminal in Burbank ranked as the third largest air terminal in the nation, with 46 airliners flying out of it daily. The airport served 9,895 passengers in 1931 and 98,485 passengers in 1936. In 1931, Lockheed was then part of Detroit Aircraft Corp., which went into bankruptcy with its Lockheed unit. A year later, a group of investors acquired assets of the Lockheed Company. The new owners staked their limited funds to develop an all-metal, twin-engine transport, the Model 10 Electra. It first flew in 1934 and quickly gained worldwide fame. A brochure celebrating Burbank's 50th anniversary as a city touted Lockheed payroll having nearly 1,200 by the end of 1936. The aircraft company's hiring contributed to what was a favorable employment environment at the time. Moreland's truck plant was later used by the Lockheed's Vega Aircraft Corporation, which made what was widely known as the Explorer's aircraft. Amelia Earhart flew one across the Atlantic Ocean. In 1936, Lockheed officially took over Vega Aircraft in Burbank. During World War II, the entire area of Lockheed's Vega factory was camouflaged to fool an enemy reconnaissance effort. The factory was hidden beneath a complete suburb replete with rubber automobiles and peaceful rural neighborhood scenes painted on canvas. Hundreds of fake trees and shrubs were positioned to give the entire area a three-dimensional appearance. The fake trees and shrubs were created from chicken wire that had been treated with an adhesive and then covered with chicken feathers to provide a leafy texture. Air ducts disguised as fire hydrants made it possible for the Lockheed Vega employees to continue working underneath a huge camouflage umbrella designed to conceal their factory. Burbanks Airport has undergone 7 name changes since opening in 1930. It had 5 runways that radiated in varying directions, each 300 feet, 91 m, wide and 2,600 feet, 790 m, long. It remained United Airport until 1934, when it was renamed Union Air Terminal, 1934–1940. Boeing built planes on the field. Lockheed Aircraft had its own nearby airfield. Lockheed bought the airport in 1940 and renamed it Lockheed Air Terminal, which it was known as until 1967, when it became Hollywood Burbank Airport. In 1978, it was renamed Burbank Glendale Pasadena Airport, 1978–2003, after Lockheed sold it to the three California cities for $51 million. In December 2003, the facility was renamed Bob Hope Airport in honor of the comedian who lived in nearby Toluca Lake. In 2005, the city of Burbank and the Burbank Glendale Pasadena Airport Authority, which owns and operates the airport, reached a development agreement. The agreement forbid further airport expansion until 2009. Unlike most other regional airports in California, Burbanks Airport sits on land that was specifically zoned for airport use. The growth of companies such as Lockheed, and the burgeoning entertainment industry drew more people to the area, and Burbank's population doubled between 1930 and 1940 to 34,337. Burbank saw its greatest growth during World War II due to Lockheed's presence, employing some 80,800 men and women producing aircraft such as the Lockheed Hudson, Lockheed P-38 Lightning, Lockheed PV-1 Ventura, Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, and America's first jet fighter, the Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star. Lockheed later created the U-2, State Route 71 Blackbird and the F-117 Nighthawk at its Burbank-based Skunk Works. The name came from a secret, ill-smelling backwoods distillery called Skunk Works in cartoonist Al Cap's Lil Abner comic strip. Dozens of hamburger stands, restaurants and shops appeared around Lockheed to accommodate the employees. Some of the restaurants operated 24 hours a day. At one time, Lockheed paid utility rates representing 25% of the city's total utilities revenue, making Lockheed the city's cash cow. When Lockheed left, the economic loss was huge. At its height during World War II, the Lockheed facility employed up to 98,000 people. Between the Lockheed and Vega plants, some 7,700,000 square feet, 720,000 square meters, of manufacturing space was located in Burbank at the peak in 1943. Burbank's growth did not slow as war production ceased, and over 7,000 new residents created a post-war real estate boom. Real estate values soared as housing tracts appeared in the Magnolia Park area of Burbank between 1945 and 1950. More than 62% of the city's housing stock was built before 1970. Following World War II, homeless veterans lived in tent camps in Burbank, in Big Tujunga Canyon and at a decommissioned National Guard base in Griffith Park. The government also set up trailer camps at Hollywood Way and Winona Avenue in Burbank and in nearby Sun Valley. But new homes were built, the economy improved, and the military presence in Burbank continued to expand. Lockheed employees numbered 66,500 and expanded from aircraft to include spacecraft, missiles, electronics, and shipbuilding. Lockheed's presence in Burbank attracted dozens of firms making aircraft parts. One of them was Weber Aircraft Corporation, an aircraft interior manufacturer situated adjacent to Lockheed at the edge of the airport. In 1988, Weber closed its Burbank manufacturing plant, which then employed 1,000 people. Weber produced seats, galleys, lavatories, and other equipment for commercial and military aircraft. Weber had been in Burbank for 37 years. By the mid-1970s, Hollywood Burbank Airport handled 1.5 million passengers annually. Airlines include Alaska Airlines, American Airlines, Delta Airlines, JetBlue Airways, Southwest Airlines, and United Airlines. As of August 2009, Southwest represented two-thirds of the airport's operations. In 2005, JetBlue Airways began the first non-stop coast-to-coast service out of the airport. Fiat Corporation, a private jet service, operates out of several hangars on the south side of the airport. Surf Air operates 6 daily flights out of Burbank Airport servicing Santa Barbara and San Carlos in the Silicon Valley. Atlantic Aviation, formerly Mercury Air Center, also provides jet services for several prominent companies. In 1987, Burbanks Airport became the first to require flight carriers to fly quieter Stage 3 jets. By 2010, Burbanks Bob Hope Airport had 4.5 million passengers annually. The airport also was a major facility for FedEx and UPS, with 96.2 million pounds of cargo that year. In early 2012, American Airlines announced it would cease flights in and out of Burbank. The decision followed American's parent company filing for bankruptcy protection in November 2011. American ranks well behind Southwest Airlines in terms of passenger traffic from Bob Hope Airport. For October 2011, Southwest flew roughly 233,000 passengers that month, while American was just under 30,000 passengers. A 2012 study found Burbank ranks among the lowest in terms of tax burdens for travelers, according to a trade group for travel managers. GBTA Foundation found on average Burbank charges $22.74 per day for travelers, compared with $40.31 for Chicago and $37.98 for New York. An expansion of the airport facilities began in August 2012 when construction commenced on the Regional Intermodal Transportation Center, RITC, along Empire Avenue directly across from the Hollywood Burbank Airport train station. RITC opened in June 2014. RITC links the airport to other transportation systems, including regional bus lines, shuttles, as well as the Amtrak and Metrolink rail services, and includes an elevated covered moving walkway to the terminal building. An adjacent multi-story parking structure also is planned on the site. Additionally, the airport was given $3.5 million in Metrolink funds for a bridge that would cross south of the RITC facility on Empire Avenue to the rail platform used by Metrolink and Amtrak. The RITC's overall cost was reported at $112 million and includes consolidating rental car facilities of at least 9 different rental car brands. RITC also will serve as a command center for emergency operations. Reversing recent passenger declines, the airport reported the number of passengers in the first 7 months of 2015 rose 2.4% compared with the same period a year ago. That marked a turnaround from slow passenger trends experienced since 2007. Passenger traffic continued to grow into 2017, with the airport announcing the total number of travelers rose 14.4% for the full year to just over 4.7 million. That said, the airport still remains below the peak of 5.9 million passengers recorded in 2007. Part of the reason for the decline is a lower number of flights out of the airport. Meanwhile, there have been discussions in recent years by members of the Burbank-Glendale-Pasadena Airport Authority to rebrand the Bob Hope Airport to identify the location more with Hollywood and the Burbank area. That name change was finally approved in May 2016 by the airport's leaders. Airport officials hope the branding will increase passenger traffic, particularly as the airport prepares to construct a new and larger terminal facility. For passengers unfamiliar with our airport, the word Hollywood has international recognition, Airport Executive Director Frank Mill was quoted as saying in a 2017 press release. But although we have a new name, we're still the convenient airport our passengers know and love. Prodded by the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, airport officials look to replace the aging terminal with something up to 2/3 bigger in size. The current terminal dates back to the 1930s and is deemed too close to the runways by current standards, roughly 250 feet, 76 m, instead of the required 750 feet. In November 2016, city voters approved a replacement terminal. The Burbank-Glendale-Pasadena Airport Authority has said it hopes to have the replacement terminal open in 2022. Entertainment industry. The motion picture business arrived in Burbank in the 1920s. In 1926, First National Pictures bought a 78-acre, 320,000 square meters, site on Olive Avenue near Dark Canyon. The property included a 40-acre, 160,000 square meters, hog ranch and the original David Burbank House, both owned by rancher Stephen A. Martin. In 1928-29, First National was taken over by a company founded by the four Warner brothers. Columbia Pictures purchased property in Burbank as a ranch facility, used primarily for outdoor shooting. Walt Disney's company, which had outgrown its Hollywood quarters, bought 51 acres, 210,000 square meters, in Burbank. Disney's million-dollar studio, designed by Kem Weber, was completed in 1939 on Buena Vista Street. Disney originally wanted to build Mickey Mouse Park, as he first called it, next to the Burbank studio. But his aides finally convinced him that the space was too small, and there was opposition from the Burbank City Council. One council member told Disney, "We don't want the CA.